Most people experience the Kentucky Derby through a lens or a screen. They see the mint juleps, the pastel fascinators, the blanket of roses, and 2 frantic minutes of thunder on the dirt. But when you're wearing a suit and an earpiece, the Derby doesn't feel like just a race. It's a tactical marathon. The race is just the finish line for a week of adrenaline, ego, and high-stakes chaos. I'm DK. During my career with the KSP, I worked the Derby detail 8 times. To us on the executive security detail, it's Kentucky's Super Bowl, handled with the precision of a military operation. We aren't there to watch the horses. We're there to herd the who's who of the world in a space that's bursting at the seams. In the Kentucky State Police, working the executive security detail means living in the gray space between the public celebration and the private reality of the world's most recognizable people. You're there to be a shadow, a barrier, a guardian. But every once in a while, the barrier thins. You find yourself standing in the quiet corners of Churchill Downs, where the legends wait for their cue. The places where Bob Costas checks his makeup, where Triple Crown jockeys find a moment of peace away from the crowd. Today I want to take you where the cameras don't go, behind the velvet ropes, behind the winner's circle, and into those strange quiet moments where a trooper from a small town in Kentucky finds himself trading stories with the greatest legends in sports and screen. This isn't a highlight reel of the rich and famous. It's what happens when law enforcement collides with the surreal world of celebrity. 2016, the 142nd running, I was tasked with the governor's personal escort. My job was simple on paper, but complex in practice. Get the man holding the trophy into the winner's circle at the exact right microsecond. Before the race, we were tucked away in the small tower behind the circle, one of the few places on Earth where the air feels electric. To my left, Bob Costas, a titan of broadcasting, getting makeup touched up by a frantic crew. In the doorway, a bugler softly practicing the call to post, something he has done thousands of times. A reminder, even the most iconic traditions require a lot of gray work behind the scenes. I stepped outside just before the horses were called to post. 167,000 people screaming in the stands. The second largest crowd in history. The 4 trophies were 5 feet in front of me, gleaming so bright you could see your reflection in the gold. Then came Nyquist. 2 minutes later. When Mario Gutierrez dismounted and joined the owners group, the chaos erupted. He grabbed a bottle of champagne and just let it fly. Sprayed everyone. Usually as a trooper, your goal is to be invisible. Stay out of the camera shot. Stay professional. But that day, I was soaked. My phone started vibrating before the foam dried. Text from friends and family. Was that you? A few days later, I'm at the dry cleaners. The lady holds up my jacket. Sir, what is this stain? I just pulled up the picture on my phone and pointed. That's me. And that's the jockey. Blame him. Let's go back to 2010, my first Derby. I was still a road trooper, but a cadet classmate asked me to help him with the lieutenant governor's detail. I was the new guy in the suit. I was scoping out the jockey club, a standard sweep, when I saw a guy standing alone. Even from 20 feet away, you recognized the posture. Tom Brady. Now, I'm not a Patriots fan, never have been, but he was a megastar. I approached him, not as a fan, as a trooper. Introduced myself, told him that the lieutenant governor might come through and would likely want to say hello. He was incredibly polite. We made some small talk, just two guys hanging out. Before I left, I couldn't help but ask for a quick photo. He looked at me and said, "Man, if I take one with you, I'll have to take one with everybody." I get it. Total professional. I nodded, said no worries, shook his hand, and turned to walk away. Suddenly, an older gentleman walks up with two college-age girls and says, and I quote, "Tommy, get a picture with my granddaughters." Brady started to decline, but this guy wasn't taking no for an answer. Basically shoved the girls into the frame. I stopped and looked back. Brady caught my eye while he was stuck in the photo. He just shrugged, gave that familiar grin, held his palms up like, "What can you do?" I almost laughed. Then I remembered I had a job to do and headed back. That's the gray. 2011 was different. Not about the glitter, about the gravity. I met an FDNY firefighter who was traveling across the country with a flag that flew over the Twin Towers a decade earlier. He was replacing the torn sections with retired flags from every state, a way to honor his fallen brothers and sisters. Standing there, holding that frayed, heavy fabric with my brother troopers, everything else just faded off. No mint juleps, no celebrities. Just us and that flag, and the weight of a September morning a decade earlier. It was the most important thing I ever did in a suit up to that point. But then the Derby effect kicked in again. Not long after that, I ran into Brady a second time. This time, he actually recognized me from the year before, introduced himself to the lieutenant governor, and turned to me and asked, I swear, "Hey, what horses have you heard about? The track is awful today. You know any good mudders?" The most successful quarterback in history, asking a Kentucky State trooper from Jenkins for betting advice. I told him what I'd heard. He turned around, made some notes, and headed off to the windows. Same day, later on, I met Aaron Rodgers. He'd just beaten my Steelers in the Super Bowl a few months prior. Took everything in me to do it, but I shook his hand and congratulated him. Had no idea he'd eventually be wearing the black and gold himself. The year after, I found myself in Jerry Bruckheimer's suite. I turn around, Lynda Carter, Wonder Woman herself. Now keep in mind, there was a big Secret Service scandal in Columbia at the time. She looked at me and the other detail trooper and asked, point blank, "Are you guys associated with that scandal?" I had to laugh. I said, "Ma'am, we're the Kentucky version. A bit smaller in scale, but much better behaved." Then I admitted to her that she was my childhood crush. That earned a smile, and she asked to take a photo with us. In the next 5 minutes, she introduced us to Wayne Gretzky, who had just walked through the door. I looked over and saw Cal Ripken Jr. leaning against the wall. In the gray, you have to learn how to process that fast. You don't ask for autographs. You stay in your lane. You take a picture when you're asked. But you absolutely take a mental snapshot. and then you walk back to your post, like Wonder Woman just didn't call you one of the good guys. One of my most meaningful moments wasn't with a movie star or a quarterback. 2013, the Derby Museum, the Monday before the big race. I saw a gentleman in a wheelchair, Ron Turcotte, the man who rode Secretariat to the Triple Crown in 1973, 40 years earlier. I told him what a huge fan I was of Secretariat, and how awesome that must have been to ride that horse. He shook my hand, and when we went to take a photo, I knelt down so that I was at his eye level. He grabbed my arm with an embrace, and he thanked me. He said, and I'll never forget this, "Not many people ever been down to my level. That means the world to me." That's the grade nobody talks about. Not the trophy, not the roses. The moment a legend thanks you for seeing him as a man. That Derby weekend, Terry Bradshaw, a childhood football idol, came out of his suite because Andrew Whitworth told him a trooper named Derek had always wanted to say hello. Terry walked out, asked for me, and then asked me to take a picture with him. I shook his hand. What a memory. And the current governor? Well, back then, he was just the governor's son, under my watchful eye, walking the red carpet behind another childhood idol, Dr. J. My final Derby was 2017. I ended it by talking to Jerry Rice while we were meeting with the creator of Uber. On either side of us, Kid Rock and Travis Tritt. The other side, Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady, trying to get through, but Churchill Downs security would not budge. We went on about our business, and Jerry asked me, "Is it worth the hype?" I described it the way I see it. The thunder of the hooves, the sudden silence of the backstretch, and then that collective roar of over 160,000 people trying to will a horse to the finish line. He told me that had him in chills, said he could not wait to check it off his bucket list, and asked me to take a picture with him. He asked me for a picture, the GOAT, asking a trooper from Jenkins. By the time the last notes of my old Kentucky home fade, and the crowds filter out into the Louisville night, the adrenaline finally starts to subside. The governor's mansion ball wraps up. The detail clocks out. The two greatest minutes in sports become another entry into the history books. When people ask me about those 8 years, they want to hear about the celebrities, and I tell them the stories. But the truth is, the badge got me in that room. The job is what kept me there. Looking back, it's easier to get lost in the names, the Hall of Famers, the movie stars, the icons. But for a trooper, those moments aren't about the fame. They're about the bizarre human crossovers that this job provides. The irony of Tom Brady asking me for betting tips. A childhood hero like Jerry Rice asking me if the hype is real. A paralyzed jockey legend thanking me for kneeling down to his level. In the end, the velvet ropes are just a thin line of fabric. On one side is the legend. On the other is a guy doing his job, trying to keep his suit clean and his dignitary safe. And while the champagne usually gets washed out a few days later, the memories of those quiet conversations in the gray, the champagne smell, the weight of that flag, the look on Brady's face, they don't fade. They just settle right there between the history books and the legend. I'm DK Hall. Thank you for riding along with me into the gray. I'll see you a little further down the road.